The president is watching you. He is aware of your reality 1,000,000%, not because you are a threat, but because you possess something he never had, something real, something he has been chasing for decades but never caught. And now, sitting in the country's highest office, behind that desk in that building, surrounded by the Secret Service and nuclear codes and the weight of history, he finally understands what he missed. You possess what he lost. You possess what he sacrificed, because they believed that by sacrificing the good, they would prevail. But they lost that feeling. You represent what he sold to reach where he is, and he can feel it. Every time someone like you passes by without being sold, every time someone carrying your honesty appears before him, every time a consciousness of your kind enters his orbit, he feels that opposition, and it eats him alive. This is not a theory. It is a pattern, repeated for centuries. Every president who sat in that chair felt it, those who got there through deals, through compromises, those who gave pieces of their soul in exchange for pieces of power. They look at people like you, people who maintain their integrity, and feel something they cannot name. Jealousy. Pure, corrosive, undeniable jealousy. If you've felt this and have already read the preview of this statement, write "I felt it" in the comments and continue. The unbought path. You weren't supposed to see this. You were supposed to believe in the illusion. The president is powerful. The president is important. The president matters. The president sacrificed for the country. The president serves the people. But something in you never bought it, even as a kid watching addresses from the office, even in school reciting facts about elections, even as an adult watching debates and campaigns. Something in you knew, this isn't power, this is performance, this isn't service. This is transaction, this isn't leadership, this is selling. You saw the hollowness before you had words for it, the way they smile but their eyes are empty, the way they move but every gesture is calculated. They're not human anymore, they're constructs, personas, characters playing roles. If you recognize this hollowness and want to stand among those who see through the stage lights, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to join this community of the awakened. And you felt sadness, not anger, not judgment, sadness, because you recognized what they gave up to play that role, what they traded to sit in that chair, what they lost on the climb to that office. They traded authenticity for image, sovereignty for approval, truth for power, soul for status, self for system. And once you make that trade, you can't unmake it. You're bound, owned, operated by forces you can no longer resist even if you wanted to. That's what you saw. That's what made you different. That's what started your journey away from their path instead of toward it. But there was a moment, maybe many moments, when you were tempted, when you thought, maybe I should play the game. Maybe I should make the compromises. Maybe I should trade pieces of myself for pieces of power. Maybe I should climb that ladder. Maybe I should pursue that path. Maybe I should become what they became. You saw the rewards, the attention, the influence, the money, the access, the respect, or what looks like respect from people who don't know better. The ability to make things happen, to have your name remembered, to sit in rooms where decisions get made. It looked appealing, for a moment. For maybe longer than a moment. You considered it, seriously considered it. Imagined yourself on that stage, in that position, with that title, yielding that authority. But something stopped you, a voice, a feeling, a knowing, deep in your core, whispering, that's not your path, that's not real power. That price is too high, that trade isn't worth it, that role would destroy what you actually are. You listened, you refused, you chose a different path, not the one that leads to offices and titles and positions. The one that leads to actual sovereignty, to real power, to genuine authority that doesn't require permission or office or election. You chose to be unbought, and that choice is what the president envies most. You found wisdom, not in institutions, not in systems, not in the structures that produce presidents. You found it in places they never looked, in teachings they dismissed, in knowledge they called worthless, in understanding that has no market value. You learned that real power is internal, that authority doesn't come from position, that influence flows from authenticity, that sovereignty is chosen, not granted, that the highest throne is the one you claim within your own consciousness. This wasn't taught in their schools. This wasn't available in their networks. This wasn't part of their training. Because if people understood this, they'd stop seeking external validation. They'd stop competing for positions. They'd stop making the trades that keep the system running. You learned it anyway, through life, through struggle, through losses that became lessons, through failures that became wisdom, Through darkness that became illumination, through pain that became power. And once you learned it, once you truly understood, you couldn't unsee it, couldn't unknow it. Couldn't go back to believing that presidents have what you want, because you saw clearly, they don't. They have what they settled for. What they accepted instead of what you have. There was a moment when you fully committed, when you stopped looking at their path with any longing, when you completely abandoned the idea that their form of power matters. When you recognized, bone deep recognized, that you'd rather be nobody in their system than somebody who sold out to be part of it. That was your crossing, your point of no return, your threshold moment. You stepped into a different reality, one where presidents are pitied, not envied, where positions are empty, not meaningful, where titles are chains, not achievements. You saw through the illusion completely, and once you see through it, you can't be controlled by it, you can't be impressed by titles. You can't be manipulated by access, you can't be bought with position, because you understand what those things cost, and you've decided the price is too high. That's when you became dangerous to their system, not because you oppose it, because you're immune to it. You can't be recruited, can't be corrupted, can't be convinced that their game is worth playing. You're outside the structure, not fighting it from within, not trying to reform it, not attempting to change it, just completely, utterly, undeniably outside its influence, operating on different principles, pursuing different goals, measuring success by different metrics. And that terrifies them, because their entire system requires consent, requires people believing positions matter, requires humans thinking external power is real power, requires consciousness seeking what they offer. But you stopped seeking it, you stopped believing in it, you stopped giving it the consent that makes it real. The system tested you, multiple times, in various ways. It offered you smaller positions, entry-level compromises, minor corruptions, little trades that seemed harmless. Just adjust your message slightly. Just don't say that part out loud. Just compromise on this one point. Just accept this one condition. Just sign this one agreement. Just make this one exception. Every test designed to get you on the hook, because once you compromise once, the next compromise is easier, and the next, until you've traded so much that you can't remember what you originally believed, until you're so invested in the system that leaving means losing everything you accumulated. But you didn't bite. You recognized the tests. You saw the hooks. You understood the pattern, and you said no, again and again, consistently, persistently, unshakably. And allies appeared, people who also said no, who also refused, who also saw through it. You found your tribe, not in their institutions. In the margins, in the spaces they don't control, among the people they call crazy or irrelevant or fringe. These people became your real network, not connections that advance careers, connections that maintain integrity, not alliances that build empires. Alliances that preserve soul, not relationships based on utility, relationships based on authentic resonance. Meanwhile, you made enemies, not through action, through existence. Your very presence threatens their narrative. Your integrity exposes their compromise. Your sovereignty reveals their submission. They didn't need you to attack them. You just needed to be you. That was threat enough. Some tried to discredit you, others tried to ignore you, some attempted to co-opt you, others worked to isolate you. All of it designed to neutralize the threat of your example, because if people see what you have, what you maintained while they surrendered theirs, they might question their own trades. Then came the dark phase, where you wondered if you made the wrong choice, where you looked at their success, the presidents, the powerful, the positioned, and questioned your path. They have platforms, you're building in obscurity. They have influence, you're operating in small circles. They make things happen. You're working on yourself. They change policy. You're changing consciousness. They have legacy. You have what exactly? This is the cave, the place of maximum doubt, the moment where the journey feels pointless, where refusing their path seems foolish instead of noble, where your choices feel like failures instead of principles. This is where most people break. They look at the apparent success of those who compromised and think, maybe I should have compromised too. Maybe integrity is overrated. Maybe authenticity doesn't actually matter. Maybe I should have played the game. But if you're reading this, you didn't break. You went deeper into the cave instead of running from it. You faced the doubt instead of medicating it with compromises. You sat with the darkness instead of seeking the false light of their validation. And in that darkness, in that inmost cave where you had nothing but yourself, You found everything. You discovered that your power doesn't depend on their recognition. Your worth doesn't require their validation. Your sovereignty doesn't need their permission. You found the truth they can never access. You're already whole, already powerful, already worthy, already complete, not becoming something. Already something, not working toward validation, already validated by the simple fact of your authentic existence. Then came the moment that changed everything. Maybe it was a crisis, a loss, a betrayal, a collapse, a death. Something that stripped you of whatever external support you still had. Something that removed every crutch. That destroyed every safety net. That eliminated every backup plan. You were alone, completely, with only your internal resources. No one to save you. No system to support you. No position to protect you. Just you. Raw. Exposed. Vulnerable. This is where presidents would crumble, because they've built everything external. Their identity is position. Their worth is title. Their power is structural. Take away the office, they're nothing. Remove the position, they're empty. Strip the title, they're hollow. But you survived. More than survived. You thrived, because your power was never external. Your worth was never positional. Your identity was never borrowed. You had built internally what they built externally. And internal structures don't collapse when external circumstances change. You proved to yourself, if no one else, that you don't need their system, don't need their validation, don't need their approval, don't need their positions, don't need their power, because you have something else, something real, something unshakable, something eternal. And that's when the president's envy became complete. Not when you were building, not when you were choosing, not when you were refusing, but when you proved, through surviving what would destroy them, that your path was right all along. What you gained in that ordeal, it's not transferable, can't be stolen, can't be bought, can't be granted, can't be elected into, can't be appointed to, can't be inherited or achieved through any external means. You gained yourself, fully, completely, undeniably. The version of you that isn't performing, isn't pretending, isn't compromised, isn't diminished, isn't fractured. The integrated whole authentic you. That's the treasure. That's the reward. That's what makes the hero's journey worth taking. Not gold, not glory, not recognition, not title. Just becoming actually fully undeniably yourself. And presidents? They can never have that. The path to their position requires abandoning that. The climb to their office demands sacrificing that. The game they play necessitates surrendering that. So they sit in their offices, behind their desks, surrounded by their power symbols, making their important decisions, playing their historical roles, and they feel the emptiness, the hollowness, the void where themselves used to be. And then they encounter someone like you, who kept it, who protected it, who refused to trade it, who owns it completely. And they feel something they haven't felt in decades. Envy, pure, undeniable, consuming. Because you have what they sold, you maintained what they surrendered, you protected what they sacrificed. And no amount of power, real or imagined, can get it back for them. But your journey isn't done. Having found yourself, integrated yourself, become yourself, now you have to live as yourself in a world that doesn't reward that doesn't value that actively punishes that. You have to operate in systems designed for compromised people, navigate structures built by those who sold out, interact with individuals who haven't found themselves, create and build and manifest while surrounded by people still playing the game you refused. This is harder than the ordeal. The ordeal was dramatic. This is daily. The ordeal was intense. This is persistent. The ordeal ended. This continues indefinitely. You have to maintain your sovereignty while engaging with systems that demand submission. Hold your integrity while operating in environments that reward compromise. Keep your authenticity while surrounded by performance. Preserve your wholeness while interfacing with fractured consciousness. And you can't be righteous about it, can't be superior, can't be judgmental, because you understand, most people aren't bad, they're scared. They're conditioned, they're programmed, they don't even know there's another way. They think the president's path is the only path. They believe external power is real power. Your job isn't to convince them, it's to embody the alternative, to live proof that another way exists. To be evidence that you can maintain yourself and still function, that you can refuse compromise and still create, that you can stay sovereign and still build. That's the road back, returning to the ordinary world, their world. The one that produces presidents and power players and compromised leaders while carrying the extraordinary treasure of your integrated self. But they're not done testing you. The system makes one final attempt, one last offer, one ultimate temptation. It comes when you're tired. When you've been maintaining integrity for so long it feels exhausting. When staying authentic feels costly. When sovereignty feels lonely. They offer you the presidency, not literally, but metaphorically, their version of success, their definition of arrival, their form of validation. The position, the platform, the influence, the recognition, everything you've been refusing, but packaged differently, presented more attractively, framed as compatible with your integrity. You can have both, they say. You can maintain yourself and have influence. You can be authentic and have power. You can stay sovereign and have position. You can be yourself and still play the game. This is the resurrection test, the final death of illusion, the ultimate choice between their path and yours, because it's presented so attractively, so reasonably, so practically. And you have to choose, again, one final time, definitively. Do you take what they offer? Do you compromise just enough to get a seat at their table? Do you make the trade you've been refusing, but tell yourself it's different this time? Or do you say no, again, finally, eternally, not because you're stubborn, not because you're proud, not because you're rigid, but because you know, bone deep, cell deep, soul deep know, that their offer isn't compatible with what you've become, that their path would require abandoning yourself, that their position would demand surrendering your integration. You choose you, over position, over platform, over influence, over power, over recognition, over legacy, over everything they offer. You choose yourself. And in that choice, you die to any remaining attachment to their validation, any lingering desire for their approval, any residual belief that their success means anything. You're resurrected as fully yourself, completely immune to their offerings, entirely sovereign in your being. That's when their envy peaks, when you refuse even their best offer, when you choose yourself even when choosing them would be easy, when you maintain your path even when theirs is presented with everything you supposedly want. Because that proves definitively you're not refusing their path out of inability to access it. You're refusing it out of unwillingness to pay its price. You could have what they have, you just don't want it, because you understand what it costs. And that breaks their mind, because their entire justification for their compromises was, everyone would do what I did if they had the opportunity. Everyone would make the trades I made if they could. Everyone wants what I have. But you don't. You actively reject it, even when offered, even when accessible, even when yours for the taking. You say no. And that forces them to face something they've avoided their entire political career. Maybe they didn't have to compromise. Maybe they didn't have to sell out. Maybe they didn't have to surrender themselves. Maybe there was another way. Maybe you found it. Maybe they could have too. Maybe they chose wrong. That's not a comfortable realization for someone who's spent decades justifying their choices, who's built an entire identity around the path they took, who's sacrificed everything for a position that suddenly seems empty compared to your integration. So you return to your ordinary life, not seeking their platforms, not pursuing their positions, not wanting their power, just living as yourself, fully, authentically, sovereignly. And you bring something back to the world, not a teaching, not a system, not a method, just your presence, your example, your proof that another way exists. People around you feel it. They can't always name it, but they sense something different. You carry yourself differently than others. You're not performing, not pretending, not compromised, not fractured, not running programs, just real. And that realness is contagious. It gives others permission to question their own compromises, to reconsider their own trades, to examine whether they actually want what they're pursuing, to wonder if there's another path. You're not teaching them, you're just being, and your being teaches more than words could. Your integration demonstrates what's possible. Your sovereignty shows what they could claim. Your authenticity reveals what they surrendered. Some will reject you. Your presence threatens their justifications. Your choices condemn theirs. Your path questions theirs. They'll attack, dismiss, ridicule, try to prove you're wrong or unsuccessful or foolish. Let them. Their attacks are their confession. Their ridicule is their doubt. Their dismissal is their fear. They're not really attacking you. They're defending themselves from the uncomfortable question your existence poses. What if I chose wrong? But others will be drawn to you, will seek what you have, will ask how you maintained yourself, will want to understand your path, not to copy it, but to find their own version of it, to discover their own way of staying whole, to claim their own sovereignty. Those are your people, not followers, not disciples, not students, just fellow travelers on the path of integration. Fellow refusers of the compromises that produce presidents, fellow choosers of authenticity over approval. And together, you create something the system can't control, a network of sovereign individuals, a web of integrated consciousness. A collective of people who can't be bought because they already own themselves, can't be corrupted because they're already whole, can't be manipulated because they're internally validated. That's the elixir you bring back, not for everyone, just for those ready to receive it, the proof that presidents don't have what matters. That positions don't equal power, that external success doesn't mean internal wholeness, that there's another way. So the president sits in his office, makes his decisions, signs his documents, plays his role, and somewhere in his consciousness, maybe buried deep, maybe closer to surface, he knows. He knows he sold something precious for something temporary. He knows he traded something eternal for something fleeting. He knows he compromised himself for a position that will end. He knows he surrendered his sovereignty for approval that never satisfies. And when he encounters you, or people like you, who kept what he sold, that knowledge becomes undeniable. The envy becomes consuming. Not because he wants to destroy you, because he wants what you have, and he knows he can't have it. Not anymore, not ever again. The trades he made can't be unmade. The compromises can't be uncompromised. The pieces of self he sold can't be bought back. They're gone. Permanently, and all he has instead is this: the office, the title, the position, the power that isn't really power. It's a hollow victory, and he knows it. Every president knows it. The ones who climbed through compromise, who traded integrity for influence, who sold sovereignty for status, they all know it. They look at you, at your freedom, your integration, your wholeness, and they feel what they lost, what they can never recover, what they sacrificed for a chair that doesn't matter as much as they pretended it did. And that envy, it's not your problem, it's theirs. You didn't create it by keeping yourself. They created it by losing themselves. You're not responsible for their regret. They're responsible for their choices. Your only responsibility? Keep being you. Keep maintaining your integration. Keep protecting your sovereignty. Keep refusing their compromises. Keep walking your path. Not to prove anything to them, not to make them envious, not to demonstrate your superiority, just because it's your path, because it's who you are, because it's what you chose, because it's what matters to you. The president's envy is his burden to carry, not yours. Your treasure, your integrated self, is your reward for staying true when they sold out, for maintaining integrity when they compromised, for choosing you when they chose position. You don't need to be president. You don't need their office. You don't need their power. You don't need their validation. You don't need their approval. You don't need anything from them. Because you have you, fully, completely, undeniably, and that's worth more than any presidency ever was or ever could be. That's why they envy you. That's why they'll always envy you. Not because you beat them at their game, because you refuse to play their game at all. And you won something far more valuable than they ever will. You won yourself, and no presidency compares to that. Here's what you need to understand about this dynamic. It's not personal. The president, any president, every president who compromised to get there, doesn't envy you specifically. They envy what you represent, the path they didn't take, the choice they didn't make, the self they didn't keep. You're a walking reminder of their sacrifice, a living example of the alternative, breathing proof that they could have chosen differently. And that's unbearable for someone who's spent decades justifying their choices. But here's the deeper truth. Their envy is actually grief. Grief for their lost self. Grief for their surrendered sovereignty. Grief for the integrated wholeness they traded for fragmented power. And underneath that grief, recognition. Deep, undeniable recognition that you're walking the path they wish they'd walked. That you're living the life they wish they'd lived. That you're being the person they wish they'd been. That recognition is why some presidents, the ones with any awareness left, will actually try to protect people like you. Why some will quietly support those who refuse compromise. Why some will create space for sovereign individuals even though it threatens their system. Because part of them, the part that remembers who they were before they became what they are, wants to preserve what they lost. Wants to protect in others what they couldn't protect in themselves. Wants to ensure that at least someone keeps the treasure they surrendered. That's complex, that's human, that's the tragedy of their position. They're simultaneously envious of you and grateful you exist, threatened by your integrity and inspired by your sovereignty, wanting to destroy what you represent and desperate to preserve it. You don't need to hate them for this. You don't need to judge them. You don't need to condemn them. They're not villains. They're just people who made different choices, choices that led to positions of apparent power, but actual emptiness. Have compassion, not pity, compassion. Recognize the humanity in their tragedy, the loss in their gain, the emptiness in their fullness, the poverty in their wealth, the weakness in their power. And then, keep walking your path, keep being yourself, keep maintaining your integration, keep protecting your sovereignty, keep refusing their game. Not as rebellion against them, as commitment to yourself, not to prove they're wrong, to prove you're right, right for you, right for your path, right for your truth. The president will keep envying. That's his burden. Your burden? Keep being worth envying. Keep maintaining what they lost. Keep protecting what they surrendered. Keep embodying what they sacrificed. That's your role, not president, not ruler, not position holder, just you, fully, authentically, sovereignly, integrated, whole, complete. And that's more powerful than any presidency, more valuable than any office, more meaningful than any position. You're not the president, you're something better, you're yourself. And the president, every president who compromised to get there, envies that more than you could ever envy them. That's the truth, that's the pattern, that's the reality playing out across history. You didn't need to become them, they wish they'd stayed as you. You won, not their game, your game, the only game that actually matters, the game of staying you, and that victory is eternal. Now live it, embody it, be it. That's your power, that's your purpose, that's your path. The president envies you, and now you know why. Now you understand the pattern, now you see the truth. Stay sovereign, that's the ultimate victory. Let me say this again, because you need to hear it, really hear it. Let it sink into every cell, every fiber, every part of consciousness that doubts whether your path was right. You were right about everything, about refusing their compromises, about maintaining your integrity, about choosing yourself over position, about protecting your sovereignty, about keeping what they sold. You were right when everyone said you were wrong, right when the world rewarded their path and ignored yours, right when their success seemed to prove you should have compromised, right when your integrity looked like foolishness compared to their achievement. You were right. And deep down, you knew it, even in your darkest moments, even when doubt consumed you, even when their path looked so appealing, even when staying yourself felt so costly, somewhere in your core, you knew. That knowing is what saved you. That internal compass is what kept you on course. That deep recognition is what prevented you from selling out even when the offers were tempting. Trust it, that knowing, that compass, that internal validation that doesn't need external confirmation, because it's the truest thing you have. More true than their positions, more real than their power, more valuable than their approval. You don't need the president to validate your path. You don't need anyone in power to confirm your choices. You don't need external success to prove your internal integrity was worth maintaining. You already know, you always knew, and that knowing is enough. But let me validate you anyway, because even sovereign individuals appreciate recognition. Even integrated people value being seen. Even those who don't need approval still enjoy authentic acknowledgement. What you did was extraordinary, not superhuman, extraordinary. You faced the same temptations presidents face, the same offers, the same opportunities to compromise, the same pressure to conform, the same seduction of power. And you said no, consistently, persistently, unshakably, not because you're better than them, because you're more committed to you than they were to themselves. That's rare, that's precious, that's worthy of recognition, not from them, from yourself, and from others who understand what that choice actually costs. You paid a price. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Your integrity cost you opportunities. Your authenticity cost you connections. Your sovereignty cost you access. Your wholeness cost you positions. Those costs were real. Those sacrifices were genuine. Those losses were tangible. Don't minimize them. Don't pretend they didn't hurt. Don't act like choosing yourself was easy. It wasn't easy. It was hard. Continuously hard. Relentlessly hard. And you did it anyway. That's not weakness. That's strength. Real strength. The kind that lasts. And what you gained, what you kept, what you protected, that's worth more than everything they have. All of them, combined. Every president. Every compromised leader, every sold-out power player, all their positions added together don't equal what you maintained. You, yourself, your integrated consciousness, your uncompromised awareness, your sovereign being, your authentic self. That's the treasure, that's the victory, that's what makes everything you paid worth paying. The first president, the one who founded the office, you think he didn't compromise? You think he climbed to that position through pure integrity? History remembers his achievements, but what did he trade? What did he surrender? What pieces of himself did he leave behind on the path to power? He knew, in quiet moments, when the cheering stopped, when the ceremonies ended, when he sat alone with his thoughts, he knew what it cost. And he looked at people, ordinary people who never sought power, and wondered what it felt like to still be whole, to still own yourself completely, to still be integrated. The wartime president, the one history celebrates as great, who led through crisis, who made impossible decisions, who saved the nation from collapse. You think those decisions didn't fracture him? You think that weight didn't break something in him? You think he emerged from that crucible still himself? He didn't. He couldn't. The position demanded everything. The crisis consumed him. The decisions shattered him into pieces he could never fully reassemble. And when the war ended, when the crisis passed, when history recorded his greatness, he felt empty, hollowed out, used up. And he envied them. He envied people who lived through that same period without carrying that burden. He envied people who survived without making those decisions. He envied people who preserved their wholeness instead of being torn apart. He envied people who protected themselves while he lost himself in that service. Now you understand this message. Click on the video that appears on the screen and continue the stream.